welcome back everybody to Sportspot. Well, before we get started today, we're going to start talking about something going on around the campus. Stamping, shouting, and singing. The Penn University Theater Department will be presenting a production called Stamping, Shouting, and Singing. The production is about a young black woman learning of racism and sexism and fighting for her rights. Production will be on November 22nd and 23rd, both starting at 7 p.m. at the McGrew Center for Fine Arts on the William Penn campus. Now, I just want to say hello to the YouTube crowd. If you first start getting here, I'm just starting off on YouTube again, and we'll see where this goes. So getting started on today's show, we're going to talk about the Pro Bowl voting is finally open. And this means a lot of things because you get to see some of the best players combine and meet up, and possibly players throwing touchdowns to people who, they might not throw touchdowns to. But the thing is, this is a major team. These are two. It's the AFC versus the NFC, and it's always it's just a fun game to watch. They also have events going on like a quarterback thing. They've got kicker, tic-tac-toe, and many more things. And honestly, this is really cool. This is a really cool concept they're taking from the NBA. They started doing this a few years ago when they started bringing in legends to do this, and it's really fun to watch. Now, moving on here, we now have the Bucs releasing a cornerback, Vernon Hargreaves. He was benched for the lack of effort against the Cardinals last week, and it's reasonable. I understand. That is unacceptable, and it'll be hard to see what happens moving forward with this, as this is a guy that is going to be good. And if you want him to be good, you need him to be good, because it'll be interesting seeing what happens with him. Now, as well as he has 39 tackles, an interception, and a fumble recovery. This is a good player. This is a good guy who I could see fitting on a Packers team, a Rams team. He can fit on multiple teams. It's just he needs to show the effort that he obviously wasn't showing against the Cardinals, and that's an issue that he can run into. Moving on, we have Emmanuel Sanders. He got injured. He got injured last night, obviously on a hit. He had an MRI today, and he has some rib cartilage tear issues and is actually considered day-to-day. Now, this is a tough hit on the 49ers because they traded for this guy. They did a trade with the Broncos, and I wonder if this is going to affect them long-term, because a lot of these guys are going to be looking into this and wondering what's next. What's next for me if this is an issue? Because I don't understand what is going on, because you've got guys that are fighting for that position, and Jimmy Garoppolo is having trouble getting the ball to other players. He has unexperienced rookies who are dropping the ball, and that is a major issue to me. And Jimmy G also lost a left tackle. Joe Staley suffered a finger fracture or dislocation. He's getting a second opinion, but this 49ers team is hurting. This 49ers team is a hurting 49ers team, and if they can't figure it out, this is not going to be good for Jimmy Garoppolo, because he's a great player who I feel like is going to be able to push this team forward and make him a playoff team. And if you don't give him these weapons, that's only going to hurt him. That's only going to hurt him in the long run. And these guys just need to figure it out. Tyler Lockett, another wide receiver in that game last night. We'll talk more about that game later on in the show, but on Monday, Tyler Lockett was hospitalized due to a lower leg contusion and the swelling in the leg that could have possibly threatened blood flow. He went to the hospital, but it is said that he is to be okay and should be recovering soon. But that's kind of scary, because you've got this going on, and you're like, wow, what's going on there? Because you've got guys that are going to be tired of it. And I can understand why, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. There's been a lot of injuries this week, and there's been a lot of injuries this season. And we're going to get through some more here. The Rams center, this is going to hurt Jared Goff's chance of winning games. And the Rams, their center, Brian out, suffered an MCL injury and is out for the rest of the season. And that's going to hurt them because this is someone that's obviously a leader of the offensive line. He's a guy that gets, he helps direct, he helps tell the other linemen what to do. And this is a team that obviously could help, but it'll be interesting because you don't know what's going on. You don't know what's going to happen. It'll be interesting to go see what happens. Also, I'm going to say this now, but by the end of the show, we will have the college football playoff rating. And it'll be interesting to see what happens as the college football playoff show, as the time of this is going on, is actually going on right now. But it'll be interesting to see what happens after the events that have unfolded this past week. But as I was saying on the Rams center, this is going to hurt those Rams. Another injury is Emmanuel Ogbah. He's hurt. He's out for possibly the rest of the season. He was injured against the Titans. He's on the Chiefs this year. He is going to have season-ending injury to obviously repair a torn pec that he suffered in that game. And that's going to hurt that Chiefs defensive running defense. Yeah, it's already bad as it is, but that rushing defense is hot garbage. And I don't understand what they can do to fix it, because these are guys that are playing for their jobs, and if they're not stopping the run, they're not going to win the playoffs this year. They're already losing. They've already lost 4 or 5 games. And yeah, there's been 3 games where Patrick Mahomes hasn't been there, but there's been word that he's going to be able to play this week. And I don't understand what's going on with these teams, because it'll be interesting to see what happens with these teams. Another major injury to another major player is Matthew Stafford. He is out for a few weeks. He's actually considered week to week, and with back fractures that he has suffered, and that's big. He lost his starting streak, and that's he had a really good one. I don't remember the exact number, but that was broken because he didn't get to play. And what I would have done was, obviously, if you wanted to keep his starting streak going, have him go in, run one running play, then have him come off, obviously. But it's hard to see what happens moving with that, because this is a guy that's actually a really good player, and I kind of wish you'd been good. He's on one of the worst teams in the NFC North, obviously, but he's a good player. Dwayne Haskins for the Redskins is to remain the starter for the rest of the season. I don't know how I feel about this, because, listen, he's a good player, he's a good athlete, but I don't know if this is the right thing to do, because, yeah, he's obviously the best quarterback on that team right now. You don't know when Alex Smith is coming back, and you don't know who your other quarterbacks are, because this is a team that's being ran disorganized, and I don't understand why people are giving them the credit. The Redskins are a good team, kind of. Not really, my bad. But this is something that's going to probably hurt him in the long run. And now the big question. Are the Dolphins still tanking? My thought is maybe, but they're winning games now. They've won 2 games. They've won 2 games in the past week. In the past 2 weeks, they've won 2 straight. Are they done tanking? Are they kind of over this? Okay, Tua got injured, and I wondered if they were going to kind of back off a little bit on it, but I didn't know they were going to back off this much, because, yeah, it's going to be a struggle. And I don't know. I think it will be an interesting thing to see, especially with this team being the way they are. But, yeah, Coach Brian Flores, has said, we're out to win every game, period. But my thoughts are you really? These last 2 weeks, obviously, but are you really the first 8-9 weeks of the season? Probably not. You guys were losing. You're not like the Bengals. The Bengals just stank, as Pat McAfee would say it. But I don't know, because the Bengals are just a bad team. Everyone knows that. But the Dolphins were tanking for a quarterback, we all felt like. But now they're winning games. It's interesting to see what happens with that, because it's fun to watch. Coming up, we're going to talk about that 49ers versus Seahawks game, as well as a few other things. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back, everybody, to Sportspot here. And we're going to keep moving on here as we talk about more of these sports. The 49ers-Seahawks game was a great game last night that went into an amazing overtime. And like I said, it'll be interesting to see how these teams end up in the NFC West. But so I'm looking forward now. Chase McLaughlin, for that game, possible game winner, was not prepared for it. And here's my reason why. He was signed last Tuesday. He was also signed when Robbie Gould was injured. So this is obviously he's not ready. But you could tell he was nervous. He was nervous, and it was interesting to see how he was nervous, because these are guys that are going to be interesting to watch. And say Jimmy Garoppolo didn't have Emmanuel Sanders hurt, George Kittle hurt. You don't have Emmanuel Sanders. You don't have your left tackle getting hurt. You don't have these guys getting injured. It's kind of interesting to see what happens. And it's interesting to watch. And 49ers fans shouldn't be blaming Jimmy Garoppolo. He's 16-3 as a starter. 16-3 as a starter. And this is interesting to watch, because you've watched these guys and you've seen them how they play. You see, and it just clicks. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with that moving forward. And the 49ers threw an interception. Yes, I will say this. The sack on Russell Wilson was kind of spotty. That should not have been called a sack. That should not have been blown dead. But it was. Then he throws a pick. Then, obviously, everything happens for the 49ers. And then he comes back and wins. I give it Lamar Jackson versus Russell Wilson for the MVP this year. It'll be interesting to see what happens for that. The 49ers versus... And like I said, the Seahawks still come up on top. Josh Gordon comes up big in that game. And you're missing three pieces for 49ers. I want to see this game later on in the year. And Breida is also injured for the 49ers, and he's getting a second opinion on a sprained ankle after aggravating it. This is interesting to see. And I don't know. Moving on, Kaepernick is actually holding an open workout in Atlanta, Georgia on Saturday, and it's going to include on-field and interview things for the NFL. And the NFL has actually told teams that, hey, he's going to be holding something. If you need him, come out and look. And there's a lot of teams I feel like need a quarterback like Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick can still be a starter in today's league, especially with how the league's being ran by like Lamar Jackson and Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes. You got those guys that are going to be electric. And he was electric when he was their starter for the 49ers. I'll be interested to see what happens with that. And it'll be fun to watch. Another thing is that the Cowboys are showing who they are, and I believe Jason Garrett needs to be gone. I've said this a lot. As he throws his offensive coordinator on the bus, and apparently they didn't communicate the fair catch rule, the fair catch that they did, or wanted to have, that pretty much cost them the game. I'm sorry, but that's on you. That is on you as a head coach. That is on you as a coach of this team. You need to actually do this. This is your job. And honestly, he's not winning the games for him. And Dak's not doing it either. I don't think Dak's worth the $32 million that they're saying. I think maybe 25 to 28 mil, but not 30, anything over 30. Maybe 29. 28 and a half, 29 is kind of pushing it for me. And another interesting thing is the Cowboys lost to the worst primetime player in the league with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins plays terrible under the lights. And I mean absolutely terrible. And he barely won that game. 11 of 13 games, by the way, this weekend were a one-possession game. And that's insane. The two is the Atlanta Falcons blowing out the Saints that no one still has the idea of what happened. And then the Lamar Jackson versus the Bengals. Wow. Just wow. There's also being words thrown around that this year that 75 to 80% chance there's a 75 to 80% chance Freddie Kitchens will be fired at the end of the season. This is going to be tough for Baker to go through because this is going to be his third head coach in his third year. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that because this is trouble. This is absolute trouble for them. And this is a talented team. I will say that. This team is super talented. It'll be fun to watch what happens, but I don't know what's going to happen with this. Moving on here, we're going to look at the playoff picture for the AFC and the NFC. And I'm going to find this interesting because this is going to be fun to look at. The first seed, we have the Patriots in the AFC. Then you got the second seed Ravens with Lamar Jackson. This Ravens team did beat the Patriots, and it's gonna be. Then again, these teams you don't have it fight twice, and it'll be fun to watch. But a lot of these teams are going to be interesting to watch as they move forward. As I said, I think it's going to be fun to watch these teams in the future. Number 3 seed is the Texans, and they've got Deshaun Watson, who's a kind of a dark horse in the MVP race. At number 4, you have the Kansas City Chiefs. At number 5, you have the Buffalo Bills. That's a shocker to me. And at number 6 is the Steelers. The Bills being a shocker because it's the Bills. They obviously they didn't make the playoffs for so long, and then they actually finally did. But it'll be interesting to see what moves on with this coming forward for this Bills team. They're obviously building something great over there. In the NFC, you've got the number 1 seed 49ers, who just lost, like I said, on Monday Night Football. The Packers are the 2 seed after beating the Panthers. The 3 seed is the Saints, who just lost to the Falcons. The 4 seed is the Cowboys, who just lost to the Vikings. And the 5 seed is the Seahawks, who, like we said earlier, beat the 49ers. And the 6 seed is the Vikings, who beat the Cowboys. And obviously this is going to be interesting to watch, and it'll be fun to watch for these teams to move forward. With that, it's going to be fun. The Steelers actually are getting helped with their defense, and Minka Fitzpatrick is playing well. They traded for this guy. They were aggressive. They went for him, and they obviously wanted this kid. He's a good player. Since going to the Steelers, he has 34 tackles, 5 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, and 2 touchdowns. That is amazing. That is an amazing type of player because, wow, you were on a team that was tanking, and now you move to a team that's not, and it's going all in. They're going all in on Mason Rudolph this season. They're going all in on this team, and it'll be fun to watch. Coming up next, we got LSU and Bama. Then you got some major upsets going on in the season. You've got a player being suspended. You've got the college football playoff rankings, and then the Heisman rankings coming up later on Sportspot on KWPU 90.5, The Ladder. And welcome back, everybody, to Sportspot. Sorry about that there. Before we get moving on here, we've got some big news. The Colts had tried out 4 kickers today. They tried out Greg Joseph, Nick Rose, Mike Nugent, and Elliott Fry. And this is mainly because of the issues that Adam Vinatieri has been having. He's been struggling this season, and he's 46. And that's a while for this team. And I mean, they're playing extremely well. And it'll be fun to watch, especially with many of these things happening around Vinatieri, where Jacoby Brissett's been injured, and it's been hurting them a lot. Now moving on to college football here. OSU showed who they were. They show they're the real deal. They won 46-41 against Alabama. These two teams won't meet again. They aren't going to meet in the SEC championship. And really the only way Bama makes the playoffs is if these things happen. LSU wins out. Clemson loses. Baylor needs to lose some games. Oklahoma needs to lose. Oregon and Utah need to lose again. And they obviously need to win out. Now, I don't think that's going to be a hard thing to do for Bama. For them to win out, it's just relying on everything else to fall into their plates. That's what's going to be the interesting part. Now, moving on here as well. The Penn State got upset by Minnesota. Penn State was upset by Minnesota. Now, it was a decent game, too. It was a really close game. And I would say if it happened again, that game happened again, they would probably lose that game. They won 26-31. And they won 31-26, my bad. But they play Iowa next week. They play Northwestern, and then they play Wisconsin at the end of the year. My thought is they're not going to win out, and it'll be interesting to see because you've got two ranked teams, and I'll get more into college football playoff rankings, but in the AP rankings, Iowa's ranked 23rd, and Wisconsin's ranked 15. They've got two ranked opponents. It's going to be interesting to see, but my issue with them, Minnesota fans need to calm down. Minnesota fans need to calm down. You aren't the top 4 team. And here's why. The games you've played, the games you've won, minus the Penn State game, don't get me wrong. That was a good win. The games that you've won, though, are against these teams. And they were a few of them were close. You beat San Diego State, or South Dakota State, my bad. South Dakota State, an FCS team. FCS Division I team. They won by 7. They beat Fresno State by 3. They beat Georgia Southern by 3. They barely beat Purdue 38-31. They won that game by 7. They beat Illinois, who's not the greatest team in the Big Ten. They beat Nebraska, who's still struggling. They beat Rutgers, who's struggling. And they beat Maryland, who's struggling. The only win I see is Penn State. That's all they have. I don't see anything else. That's the only win that they have. And that's my issue with them. And it's interesting to see what happens. Coming up next, we've got the player that has been suspended for a couple of games. College football playoff rankings, and then possibly the Heisman rankings coming up on Sportspot on KWPU 90.5, The Ladder. And welcome back, everybody, to Sportspot on the last segment here. And we're going to talk about a player that's been suspended, the college football playoff rankings, and then the Heisman rankings going on here. Chase Young, the defensive end or defensive player for Ohio State, is suspended at most 4 games, at least 2, for asking for a loan to fly his girlfriend out to the Rose Bowl. He paid it back, which I don't understand what the issue is. This being because I don't see an issue with it. It's not from a booster. It's from a family friend. I don't understand what the issue is. And if it's with the way he got this money, that's what you need to say. That's what you need to say is the issue, is how he got the money to pay it back. Be him, unless it's from him working, not using his name or likeness to earn this money back. Obviously, not yet. Athletes can't do that yet until 2021. But still, this is something that needs to be discussed. This is ridiculous. This is a guy that's going to be... If he misses out the rest of the year, I don't think he really misses much. This being because... Look at what happened with Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa took the senior year off because he was injured. Yeah, guess what he does now? He terrorizes the NFL. He terrorizes quarterbacks. I'll find it interesting to see what happens with this guy because I feel like he's another Nick Bosa. Nick and Joey Bosa. It'll be fun to watch that. And that's an issue with me. Now we're going to get into the college football playoff rankings that just came out just a little over an hour ago, or under an hour ago. At number 25, we have Appalachian State, who actually, Appalachian State wasn't ranked before this week. You have Kansas State at number 24. They drop 8 spots. At number 23, you have Navy, plus 1 spot. Oklahoma State, they're up 1. At number 21, Boise State, they are as well up 1. At number 20, you have Iowa, who dropped 2 spots after losing last week. At number 19, you have Texas, who wasn't ranked, and that kind of is a little sketchy. I want to know what their schedule is. I need to look more into that. At number 18, you have Memphis, who's up 3. At number 17, you have Cincinnati, who is up 3. At number 16, you have Notre Dame, who is down 1. Number 15, Michigan, who is also down 1. Number 14, Wisconsin, who as well is down 1. Number 13, Baylor, who is down 1. Number 12, Auburn, who is down 1. And number 11, you have Florida, who is down 1. Getting into the top 10 here, these are some actually pretty good teams, and it's actually a close battle for this number 4 spot. At number 10, you have Oklahoma, who is down a spot. At number 9, as I said earlier, Penn State, who got upset by Minnesota, is down 5 spots, down at number 9. They were ranked 4th last week, and no one expected them to lose this game. At number 8, Minnesota, who is up a spot. At number 7, you have Utah, who is up 1. And now getting into the bubble spots here. Now, this is a really close race right here. See, 7, 6, and 5, and 4 are really close. And 3. So, at number 6, Oregon, who is up a spot. Now, Oregon's a team that needs a win. Oregon is a team that needs a win out. At number 5, you have Bama. And as I said, they have a lot of circumstances to be able to make it back in. At number 4, you have Georgia, who sneaks their way in. At number 3, you have Clemson, who is up 2 spots. Both Georgia and Clemson are up 2 spots. At number 2, it was Ohio State, who played a close game. And at number 1, LSU. LSU is now up to the number 1 spot. They're up a spot. And that's actually a really good feeling for them, I bet, especially after beating Alabama as they did over the weekend. Now, this was a really, really weird week, especially in the NFL, especially in college football, because of all the upsets that have happened. You have the Dolphins winning games now. You have the Falcons beating the Saints. You have Lamar Jackson running all over the place. You have teams that are actually being good. It's interesting to see what happens. You have Kirk Cousins winning a primetime game. Now, we are going to get into the Heisman rankings. The Heisman watch. We're going to do as I did with the college football playoff here. Justin Fields, the quarterback for Ohio State, who's actually now here at number 5. And he's a good quarterback. He's being talked as one of the best quarterbacks in the college game right now. At number 4, you have Wisconsin running back Jonathan Taylor, who's a really good running back. Don't get me wrong. I just want to see more of him. At number 3, you have Oklahoma quarterback Jalen Hurts, a transfer out of Alabama, who's coming for a Heisman Trophy win. At number 2, you have Tua Tagovailoa, the Alabama quarterback. And at number 1, you have Joe Burrow, the LSU quarterback. This is going to be an interesting thing because this is going to come down to the wire. And it'll be fun to see who makes it into this college football playoff. That's all for tonight, guys. Come back again next time and come back to Sportspot on KWPU 90.5, The Ladder.